Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Varner, Doug Larson, Eric Byrnes.
Yeah.
Dude, this is super cool because we are at the Spartan World Championships, the Spartan World Media Fest. There's like 9 different names they want me to say, and those are 2 of them. Hosted by ATP Science and Barbell Shrugged and Spartan Up Podcast. Make sure we give all the shout-outs to everybody that paid for this beautiful Airbnb that we're hanging out in. But Marion Abrams, good friend of ours, she runs the Spartan Up Podcast, and we have a nice little inside line to her. I said, look, we have like 100-something podcasters coming. I can't talk to all these people. Tell me the 2 that I need to have on the show. And you were the first one that came out. And just in talking to you in the begingetting here, now I know why, because you have a ton of stuff going on. Your journey started as a baseball player. I remember watching you, Oakland A's, right?
Yeah.
And Greg, our stat checker in the background, tech guy, he told me that he was reading your bio, and your very first game you got in a bench clearing brawl.
How about that?
What a guy. Way to spice things up. UCLA.
Well,
was that 100% your fault, or was that just like you happened to be in a big brawl?
It was definitely not his fault. He just had to. He was the enforcer.
I'll take blame.
Yeah.
But
did you finish it, or did you start it, or both?
No, I started it. Now, you have to understand, I got out on the front line, and I was ready to finish it.
Yeah.
There was a pitcher, as a matter of fact, by the name of Steve Reed, that took exception to the way I was swinging the bat. And it's so funny how now the game has changed because you don't see a home run hit without dudes pimping it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And back then it was like you didn't even want to like so much as glance at the picture. If you look at the picture the wrong way, he's going to throw at you. So in this case, my first day in the big leagues, had a couple hits, stole a bag, was running all over the field. And late in the game, I took a big hack on a hanging slider and stuck the next one in my ribs. And I put my head down and ran to first base, didn't think anything of it. And then the whole dugout, I heard them chirping. And they're like, dude, that's bullshit. Da, da, da.
Is this your dugout?
This is our dugout.
Oh, so they knew he was coming after you.
Bullshit for hitting you.
Exactly.
Right.
But again, like,
You're the
I'm
new
just
guy.
like, oh,
It's your first day.
It's my first day. I'm good. Like, it actually felt good.
I'm not angry yet.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
No.
I made it.
Yes. And so
I'm making money today. Leave me alone. I love this game.
and you're not kidding.
Yeah,
because
totally.
you guys got to understand, my first paycheck in professional baseball,
Yeah.
$350. That's a 2-week paycheck.
Oh.
So
Okay.
when I got to the big leagues, and fortunately I was able to get
Well,
there
they
quickly.
are paying your rent for you to sit on a seat in a bus, so, low expenses.
it's so bad.
Well,
It was so bad.
I did a short stint doing strength coaching with the Colorado Rockies for their minor league team in California. And like that's how all the players get paid like $1,200 a month. Like
Well,
they
you know
don't
how it
make
is.
big money. They might have a signing bonus that has real money potentially. Some of the pitchers maybe, but then like the monthly salary is not high.
I signed for a bus ticket to Medford, Oregon. So
Yeah.
it was. If I didn't have my mom to help, my parents really to help support me at that point, I don't know how I would have survived. But anyway, so I get hit. These guys are chirping. The next inning, we decide we're going to throw one behind Sandy Alomar, and a big veteran, and so that incited this bench clearing, almost brawl. And I never forget. Like I'm just like, geez, this is not happening. But oh well. So I ran right out in the front. I wanted to make sure I was not going to cite anything, but I wanted to be on the front lines. I wanted to let the boys know, like, hey man, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And I get out there, and it was just. Whew, there was David Segui. And of all the guys in Major League Baseball that you didn't want to mess with, it was David Segui. And he literally had, like, snot come out of his nose. He's self-admitted, like, it's, dabble in all sorts of every drug you could imagine.
Yeah,
well, as far as performance-enhancing drugs, he later admitted to all this stuff.
Sure.
And he's just jacked out of his mind.
You were on the A's team, too, which wasn't.
Well, yeah, well, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Plenty of dudes weren't clean on our end as well.
Everybody. It was
So-
part of the process.
A lot. Not as much as you would think, though, believe it or not. But anyway, I come face to face with this dude, and I'm just like, okay, here we go. And Matt Stairs stepped in between us, and almost like a negotiator.
He's on your team?
He's on my team. And so Stairs and Segui start talking. And next thing you know, now I'm face to face with Omar Vizquel. And I'm like, oh, this is better, right? Just light-hitting shortstop, but just Hall of Fame caliber defense like you've never seen. And I grew up a huge fan of his, and I'm staring at him. I'm like, dude, Omar Vizquel. I go, I'm a huge fan, man.
Before we punch each
Right
other,
as
can I
he
get an
punches you,
autograph?
that's right.
Yeah.
So that was it. He like shook my hand. He's like, "Oh, welcome, Big Leagues, kid." I'm like, "Hey, thanks. Yeah, sorry for all this whatever's going on."
This is tough right now. It gets better. Dude, I watched a documentary called Fastball. And I love talking to people that actually play the game, because if you just watch the game on TV, you see the pitcher throw the ball to the catcher, and the guy at the plate's trying to hit it. But if you are really talking to like a professional fastball pitcher that's throwing the ball 96, 100 miles an hour, they're holding a weapon, and they're very aware that they're holding a weapon. And there's a guy standing at the plate that can't actually see the baseball coming at him because it's coming so fast. You just kind of hear it and hope. And I had never heard a pitcher or many pitchers specifically in this documentary talking about like, no, I'm standing on the mound and my job is to take that person out. And I could throw it at his head at any point in time. And the batter knows that, and there's a fear game that's going on, and it literally changed. I mean, it played baseball, but never at a level where there was like masculinity and ego and all the extra stuff that goes into it, and it radically shifted. Like my childhood of watching Randy Johnson, of like, oh, that guy's great. No, he's a murderer. He could kill you with his fastball. That left hand coming from way the hell out there. That stuff's terrifying being up there.
Yeah. It's you know what though, when you're playing, you don't really think about it like that. It was sort of the same game that I played in Little League.
Yeah.
And I just never stopped playing. As the velocities ticked up, obviously, there's the danger element to it. I got hit in the head before, 96 in the head. Got hit actually in the jaw, 95 mile per hour fastball from Scott Proctor, who ended up pitching for the Yankees. You know what? It shifted my jaw, but it didn't break. So my jaw was like on the other side and just hanging out there, and it gradually sort of went back. But I was sucking Lucky Charms out of a straw for the entire summer in Cape Cod. But yeah, it's one of those things that really I can't tell you, very few times, if ever, did I step in the box actually worried about it.
Really? But you can't play afraid.
No, exactly. You can't, and I just think that there's so much of the game that there's so many other elements that you need to focus on in order to be good that fear can't even creep in. And if fear ever creeps in, and this goes to even little leaguers, I mean, once that fear creeps in, for the most part, you're done. And the analogy can go ahead into all the endurance stuff that I do now, even and stuff that you guys are involved with. It's if you have that element of fear, there's a certain part that's, I think, healthy, and then once you cross that line, it's not. And you got to do everything in your power just to try to stay on track and realize that there's so many things that are outside of your control in life that you can't do anything about. And so a pitcher throwing a ball at my head or in my face, that was always one of them.
Yeah. It's interesting because when Marion told me that I needed to interview you, I was looking at all the bios, and I scrolled right by you because I was expecting to see a baseball player in the bio, and you're wearing a wetsuit instead, and you're here today. I would never guess that you were a Major League Baseball player or talked about baseball professionally still. Where are the big interests now? And I guess, you went for a big run this morning. We're out here at the Spartan World Championships. Kind of what has been the transition for you out of baseball and kept that fire going with you?
Well, I think like everybody in life, we all go through different transitional periods. And I think, the professional athlete is none more so evident than someone like that has to go through a major transitional time in his or her life, where all of a sudden their entire life that they had invested since they were kids is over as they know it. And then, basically you have to kind of step back and say, where can I redirect that passion? And I always knew, even when I was a kid, I would have told you guys, like, there's two things I want to do in life. Number one is play professional sports. Number two is talk about professional sports. And I want to get into TV. I want to get into radio. I've always enjoyed debating topics and subjects and, stuff that stimulates us mentally. And then physically, I think that there was this huge void. And so when I first got done, I started playing slow pitch beer league softball, naturally.
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that lasting like 3 weeks. You're like, this is so far away from where I was yesterday.
and that's funny. That's probably what it lasted. I think it lasted 4 or 5 weeks. And my Dutch Goose team, and it was cool because I was playing with all my buddies and everything. And then after a minute, it was just like, okay.
Yeah.
So
did you know the very last time you're walking off the like major league field, like this is the last time I'm going to be on this field playing the game at this level? Yeah. And you like were very cognizant of that as you were walking off the field that day.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
It was tough. It was emotional because it was my choice to be done. And walking off the field, I remember I struck out, and I was playing for Seattle at the time, and I had a great spring training. I'd gotten off to a terrible start, though, and I'd been hurt the 2 years previously. And, I knew it was coming to a head in Seattle, where it's just like, dude, they're going to have to make some changes. Most likely they were going to release me. But the question was going to become, am I willing to put in the work to continue to play?
Yeah.
And, when you're 24 years old and you have, an entire big league career in front of you, like, you're willing to do whatever it takes. And at that point, I was 34 years old, and in my mind, I had seen every facet of the game. I've been the last guy on the bench, going up and down. I went up and down 9 times when I first came up with Oakland. AAA, big leagues, AAA, big leagues. So there was a lot of that going on. Mm-hmm. I had to scrap and claw for every ounce of playing time that I got. Eventually got in there, went on a 22-game hitting streak, went to the playoffs multiple times. Had a couple big years, had a couple big seasons. Had one season where I hit 20 home runs, stole 50 bags, one of 11 players in the history of baseball to ever do that. So I want to say, there was an element of feeling a little bit of the stardom too, in at that level. Mm-hmm. And then I'd also dealt, not until the very end, but dealt with a twinged hamstring that I tried to play through and tore it off the bone, and then came back. And as soon as I came back, I get hit with a ball and shattered my hand, and everyone's got their sob story. But at that point, it was just like, dude, I know this sounds weird, but I knew I could hang on and play till I was 42. There was no doubt in my mind I could play till I'm 40, easy. Mm-hmm. And I knew I could keep myself in good enough shape to do it. The question is, did I want to grind through all of the I was going to have to sign a AAA contract, go back to AAA, which I wasn't opposed to doing. It wasn't an ego thing. Yeah. It was just the complete upside was, okay, now you're back in the big leagues, playing against left-handers, not playing every day, scrap for the every time. It's just, I was ready to move on with my life. Yeah. And so, anyway, just kind of go back to what your original question was about, the transition. What happened was I ran into 3 junior high school friends of mine, and they were going down to do the Pacific Grove Triathlon. And this is just a few weeks after I got done playing. And they're like, hey, come do it with us. It's a sprint triathlon. I'm like, geez. I said, it's always fascinated me. I used to watch Ironman World Championship with my dad. And when I was a kid, I remember Julie Moss crawling to the finish line. And I'm like, man, okay, might as well go try this thing.
I'm in great shape.
Those
I'm
are the greatest
athlete.
videos. Anytime you see an ultra-endurance athlete, like, crawling their way over the finish line, they're totally bonking. There's people, like in the background, like, trying to catch them, and they're just, like, fucking crawling their way through the finish line. Like, it's to be that at that level of fatigue and still just pushing to win is insane.
And that's what got me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what is it that would push somebody that much where they're literally crawling across the finish line, peeing themselves and shitting themselves? Like, what is that? Like, right. How do I get there?
I want to do that.
And so anyway, dude, I ended up going down there. I did this tryout. I didn't know. I'd surfed my whole life, but I'd never swam, so I didn't really know how to swim. Got in the water, I almost drowned. They have this thing called the kelp crawl, really, because there's a ton of kelp in the water at Pat Grove.
Is it California?
California, gotcha. It's Pebble Beach.
Okay.
And end up on the beach like a beach whale, like just thankful to be alive. And I was wearing a 5mm surfing wetsuit too, which is not good for mobility or anything else.
Mm-hmm. And when you go out there, you're basically you're in like a fight in water. People are crawling all over you. You can't breathe. It's nasty.
So I got on my bike, and the only bike I owned at the time was a beach cruiser. And I didn't show up to this triathlon like to be the cool guy on the beach cruiser. I showed up because I was just like, I'm just bringing my bike and I'm going to be fine. And this is like normally, like, I'm sure there's other beach cruisers here and there's probably some BMXs and stuff.
Sure.
And I had no fucking clue. I had no idea what this whole thing was.
Right.
So I get on my bike. I'm getting passed by 15-year-old girls because they got the names on the age on the calf. And then get off the bike and run a few miles. And I finished the race. All three of my friends kicked my ass. And I just told them, I said, this is the last time you guys are ever going to beat me. And I thanked them for introducing me to the triathlon. And 11 months later, I did my first Ironman, and then within like a 7-year period, I did 11 Ironmans and transitioned into ultra running. Yeah. And somehow, much like Ironman, I became fascinated with the Western States 100. And I learned about this race all back in like 2006 when this dude actually ended up collapsing at the finish line, and as he's doing like the last 0.2 miles around the track, and they pick him back up, and then he runs and collapses. They pick him back up, runs, collapses. The same sort of thing as watching Julie Moss, and I was like, man, this is fascinating. And then he ends up crossing on his own, and they never helped him forward at all, and they disqualified him.
Why?
And he won the race by 20 minutes, but disqualified him because he can't have assistance.
Oh, pick him up.
And so that was the first time I learned about Western States, and so I kind of made it my mission that, when I turned 40, this is in 2016. So I was like, I want to do Western States, and qualified for it, and was fortunate to be able to get drawn in the lottery to get selected to do it, and completed the Western States. So it was, between those two things, getting into Ironman and then Western States, and then last summer we did this crazy triathlon across the country as part of this foundation that my wife and I started called Let Them Play. I just basically fell in love with the endurance world, fell in love with pushing the body to new extremes, and really finding out what we're capable of. I think one of the things is people say, what are you running from? And for a long time I pondered that, and it's funny because it's like I think people who do ultra endurance sports, like, it's not what they're running from, it's what we're running to. And you meet every one of your deficiencies, every one of your problems head on, and you're not scared to take on whatever is there. And I think that's just kind of how I've always lived my life.
Yeah.
And endurance sports has been an incredible outlet to be able to engage with.
A lot of the training that you're doing for baseball, and then you're heading out, so I guess in two parts, like, what was the strength and conditioning / like training side that you guys were doing during the season? You mentioned tearing your hamstring off the bone, like the rehab of all that, and then now you have to go run endurance races. There's a massive transition just physiologically that has to happen. So what did it look like in baseball, and then how long did it take before you felt confident doing triathlons and endurance races?
Well, baseball, I imagine I trained much like you do or you did.
Yeah.
And it's real heavy power cleans, squats.
I'm glad you picked that up by looking at me. I feel really, I feel good right now. Heavy. I feel great.
Look like you lift the weights.
Man, we banged it in the weight room and got after it, and everything was super anaerobic, right? And so baseball, if you think about it, like everything's short burst speed. Where when you get into endurance sport, it's the exact opposite. I used to say, like, my long run used to be going from first to home. Right?
Guys, no high fives. No high fives. I need a break.
It's incredible, but we were trained to be thoroughbred racehorses. Yeah. And so the transition, physiologically going from being a Major League Baseball player and going into endurance sports, there's very few parallels other than the mental element of endurance, because I think being a baseball player taught me the mental capacity for endurance. Physically, I had to completely reshape my body, and I had to, kind of change that mindset as to, hey, look, man, we're going to go, and we're going to go all day, and we're not going to stop, and we're going to be okay with that. And so it's, in all of us in life, it's like we need to find where's your threshold? Where's that point where you're going to be able to continue to go, and you could sustain that for seemingly like an eternity. And just recently, I think I mentioned you guys, before we came on the podcast, we did this 24-hour world record golf event.
Yeah.
There was this world record that it's stood for 47 years, and we're trying to kind of figure out what to do after the triathlon across the country in support of the foundation, and came up with this crazy idea to chase this most golf holes played in 24 hours, which was, it stood at 402 and was set by a guy in Australia. And 47 years later, it still stood. And now there's been some guys that went after it and whatever. But basically, when we decided to do this, I knew I was going into uncharted territory, because even with Western States, that took 22 hours. Like, now I'm going, it's even a couple hours further. It's like, how do you get to that point where you know that you're going to be able to continue? And in baseball, you don't know. Like, in baseball, it's like I would have never been able to find that threshold, because my it stopped at 90 feet.
Yeah.
And then it was done. Whereas in this endurance sport stuff, dude.
Well, the endurance part of baseball
level.
is the fact you have to play 162 games in 190 days or whatever it is. It's like insane, the schedule.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah, just we were walking by Fenway last time we were up in Boston, and we saw, it's like the behind the scenes of like everyone's luggage is just there getting loaded onto a bus. It's like, oh, they're going to go hit the road for 5 days, and they're going to come back, they'll be home for 5 days. And then they're on the road for 8 days. Like, that's the endurance piece of baseball. Like, you're not fully testing kind of like 22 hours straight.
Yeah, you know what the thing is that with baseball, there's no other way to put it. It's an absolute mental mindfuck. And you have to post up every single day, and there's no quit. And no matter what, even in my best seasons, it was like you're only as good as your last performance.
Yeah.
And I wish I took a little bit of a different perspective and realized that, hey, look, what's done in the past is done in the past, but fuck what happened in the past. I'm only as good as my next performance.
Yeah.
Right? And so much of my self-worth, and baseball players all around, so much of their self-worth is buried into what they've recently done.
Yeah.
And so you guys could imagine the roller coaster sort of season that you're going to be able, you're going to have to endure in 162 games of having success. And, quite frankly, though, it's a game that's predicated on failure.
Yeah. How do you recover from playing every single day for months on end? Like, how do you make sure that you don't just crash as the season goes on, performing less and less, like losing body weight, losing strength, like losing your edge, losing your motivation even?
It's tough, because if you want to go out and play the game the right way, you're going to be laid on the field night in and night out. And if there's one thing that I prided myself on, it was playing hard and getting after it on a nightly basis. And I 100% think that it also deteriorated my performance through the course of the season. I would find a second wind as we got closer to October.
Yeah.
And you started seeing the playoffs in the picture. But there were some seasons where, definitely I'd come in at like 210, solid as a rock, and next thing you know, I'm freaking struggling at to try to get up to 200.
Yeah.
And for the most part, you're losing some strength along the way, and it's beating you down, and plus the travel. But look, I'm not going to try to, glorify it by any means. Like, did you fly on private jets and stay in 5-star hotels, and the Bull Durham shit's true. Like, you hit the white balls for batting practice, and the women all have long legs and brains, and everyone carries your suitcase. And, like, it's real. It's a false reality that I'm very fortunate that I felt like I was able to play my entire career and have a really good perspective on how fortunate I was, and also that that's not really real life.
Yeah.
With that being such a big piece of your life, do you still kind of, I guess, identify as a baseball player, or is this new kind of endurance life that you have much more of the identity and much more of kind of the circle that you run in and connect with now?
That's a good question, because I think a lot of it, if my identity is in baseball at all, and publicly right now, I would say it's through television.
Yeah.
And so, the majority of the people that will come up to me and say, "Oh, hey, Eric Byrnes, I watch you on MLB Network."
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think I enjoy that a lot more even than when someone comes up and says, "Hey, man, oh yeah, I used to watch you with the A's or watch you with the Diamondbacks, whatever." And I actually like when someone will come up and say, "Hey, dude, I watch you on TV, and that's awesome." Or even more so, I do like this daily blog called The Daily Hustle, which is they're like writings, kind of thoughts, ideas. A lot of it based on life experience. A lot of it stoic philosophy related. And so they're just kind of these short things that I send out in the morning, and I do a corresponding podcast with it called The Daily Hustle as well. And in the podcast, I just kind of free flow. I'll read the short thing and then free flow after that, and sometimes get animated and stuff. And so, when I wrote a book called The Effort List, Life Lessons from a Human Crash Test Dummy,
Nice.
which was my nickname when I played baseball. And so when someone comes up and says like, "Dude, Byrnesy, I read the book, man, kill it." Like we just had a guy today out at Squaw, and he's like, "Dude, I read your book 3 times, and I'm all over the Daily Hustle." And he was wearing a Let Them Play hat,
Nice.
which is the foundation that my wife and I
Yeah.
started. And that's the type of thing that, as far as like, being rewarding, that's the most rewarding when when you have someone that follows you. And makes an investment daily into what you're doing and what you're currently doing. Where baseball, I don't identify myself as a baseball player at all. It was cool. It was something I did in the past.
Yeah.
But when it was done, it was done. And then it was broadcasting. And then it was endurance sports. And so, now when it comes to, identifying myself as any sort of athlete, it's just, dude, it's the long stuff.
Yeah. And
why is your foundation called Let Them Play? What's the origin of that?
So basically, a few years ago, we were trying to put our kids in school, and they were just getting that age, and we're looking at all these different schools, and there was one school in our area, public or private, one school in the entire Half Moon Bay greater surrounding area that had everyday physical education.
wow.
And so I knew how important PE was for me as a kid, and being able to get outside and be active on a daily basis.
The only thing I was good at.
The only thing, right? And then so what happens?
Math? No. You want to play dodgeball? Gotcha.
And well, the crazy thing is that dodgeball experience for you then allowed you actually to go back in the classroom and do better at math.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing when we're active and moving is we're stimulating our brain. And so there's actually now brain scans to show what activity does. And it's quite frankly, it's an epidemic. So,
Back to the kids and the foundation and all that. I'd imagine you having an 8-year-old, like your is a son?
yeah.
Yeah. So your son probably grew up in a slightly different culture and environment, coming up, being raised by you. You're passionate about movement and physical activity. So, his upbringing is probably different than a lot of kids who just don't have a parent that's as passionate as you are about that. But you probably, I'd imagine, face many of the same challenges all parents face. Like with, your kid probably still, even though he likes to play outside and whatnot, he probably still thinks iPads are cool. I love movement. I love training. And I think iPads are pretty rad.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you just steer him away from it, but at the same time accept the fact that iPads are just a cool device and everyone thinks they're cool?
Yeah.
Like, how do you find a balance there where you're not like?
I think you set the time a day.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, dude, we're going to give you an hour. Go get it. You want to watch a show? My wife does a really good job of managing that. I have a 9 and 10-year-old daughter too. So there's, I have an 8, 9, and 10-year-old that the 10-year-old.
3 kids in 3 years.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're going to be learning here.
played
He's
that
got
game.
that.
Irish triplets. Just fire them out. So my oldest one, I can't get her off the book.
Oh, like actual real paper books?
She just reads.
That's awesome.
And,
That's good.
and that's exactly it. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't stop this.
Yeah.
But she's a gnarly ski racer too. And she's very meticulous about what she does. And it's funny because I would say of all my kids, she has a really conservative personality. And then she gets on the mountain, she just freaking rips.
Yeah.
And I think it's like her outlet of letting go. But I got this middle child that's wild as could be. She walks to the beat of her own drum, and she's literally, she's a wildflower. Like, she's crazy. And I can't tell you, one thing I've learned with the 3 kids is that I never thought that I would have 3 kids that are so different. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just 3 completely different sort of individuals. And then, my boy is like a little mini me. And it's been cool. But yeah, it's just
I feel like that's a running theme with anyone that has kids, that they're like, dude, they just come out of the box different. They're just They just are. Like, the upbringing can be very similar. They're just different people.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think ultimately, if there's parents listening to this or whatever, do everything in our power. Take responsibility for it too, and don't just blame it on the kid, because if you're letting this happen, you're facilitating it. Now, just like anything else, right? If we're going to take alcohol away from an alcoholic, or cigarettes or chewing tobacco away from someone who is addicted to nicotine, you have to give them an alternative. And if you don't give them an alternative, they're going to melt. And so if you're going to take TV or your iPad away from your kid, have an activity ready for them to do. Have an idea. Give them something. And that's so often it's like, oh, well, go figure it out. Yeah, there's been times I shoved them outside and said, figure it out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, hey, dude, let's go toss football around. Or, even to one of my girls, like whatever it is, hey, let's walk down to the beach. Let's go do this or do that. And it's like, oh, okay. But it's funny because they get in that trance, and I know you guys have felt that trance, like when you're just looking at your phone too long or computer screen too long, you just start to lose your mind, and it's tough to get out of.
You go through that like rhythm. Your thumb just goes in the same circle over and over and over again. And you're like, get me out. I'm in the Matrix. I'm stuck in Instagram. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
I feel like it's much easier to get my kids outside when I'm actually home. Like right now I'm on the road. I'm in Tahoe. My wife, their mom is at home watching 3 kids. And so she's taking care of 3 kids. Like it's harder to like go play when you're taking care of 3 kids. You got a lot of responsibilities, like outside of just playing with your kids all the time. Like I know you travel quite a bit. Like how does your wife handle that when you're on the road?
I think you said it right.
I don't know.
I don't know. And there's a certain element of you got to let go a little bit, right? Because you can't try to micromanage everything. She knows what we're both committed to and how we're committed to raising our children. So they have activities all day though, and it's karate to soccer to baseball during the winter. We live up here in Tahoe, and it's for my boy it's snowboarding to skiing. For the girls, it's skiing, they're horseback riding. I mean, it's there's always kind of something going on, and so you have these structured activities. And then there's also that time when you let go and you say, okay, here's a couple hours of just kind of free play, and if you guys want to watch a show or you want to get on the iPad or whatever you want to do. The thing that like makes me like really happy is when my dad used to always tell me this, to try to catch your kids doing something right. I'm like, huh. And so like when I catch the middle one, the wild child, right? When I see her sitting there like with her dolls and they're talking and playing, and she's 9, so she's getting kind of out of that stage.
Yeah.
But when I still see her in it, there's nothing better, right? There's just this think about what we got to do with our minds to put ourselves into this crazy, awesome, imaginative sort of state.
I just started seeing stuff like that with my 14-month-old. Where like she'll just be lost in some like toy playing with these little things. I'm like, you're doing it. Keep going. Oh. Stay there. Don't come out into the real world.
So cool.
Dude, when you're doing this triathlon across America, something that is that long, the media kind of picks up to it. Your word gets out that you're doing it. Did you feel a momentum kind of building as you were going across the country, and start to feel a lot more support kind of middle way through all the way to the East Coast?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you said it right. Like as you go, like it's like, dude, what's this guy doing? Right. Yeah. And so you're going city to city. I think it really picked up in Chicago when we went there and we were on WGN and I was on the Cubs broadcast, and they gave me a really sort of big platform to champion the foundation and champion exactly what we were doing. And so we had a lot of attention on us as we were doing the run on a daily basis. I was trying to capture all of it on Instagram, story times, and there's some dark days. And
what goes on in your brain in that many days on the road?
You know what?
Not just on the road, running and spending a lot of time with yourself.
Yeah, I think the thing that really got me, at least physically, was, when we started running, we were running 30 or 40 miles a day. And I hadn't run in a month because I was biking every day. And so obviously you're using different muscles there. And, my endurance capacity was awesome, of course, because I'm biking 100, 150 a day. So all of a sudden, I'm running all that pounding. So I think it was like the third day I went like 30, I went we did like 35 the first day, backed up with like a 32. And then I was trying to get to the Golden Dome at Notre Dame. And we could have come up short. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm getting there, right? And so we cranked it, and I ended up going like 38 cents. Like, here's all this blood that rushed down to my Achilles that said, dude, you're pounding me, you're pounding me. I can't take this. And then now you're circulating fresh blood. So it's almost like the same concept and idea of PRP, right? I think that's PRP. I said it right. But and I've talked to a few doctors about this because I wanted them to explain to me how or why they thought I would have been able to run on in this sense. And they said exactly that. They're like, no way we would have recommended you do it. But if you were to tell me that it, quote unquote, miraculously got better in a week's time, that's exactly what happened, is you kept circulating in the blood. The blood never stopped circulating. So also when I got done, one of the things I did every single night and every single morning was I got in the Normatec boots, which would, again, all this blood's rushing down to my legs because I'm pounding them, and it's circulating the blood within the legs. And the other crazy thing, that happened is I got stronger as I went on.
Yeah.
And, my endurance at the end of this thing was just way better than, even when I started.
How much of it do you think is even a physical battle? I mean, you had an injury in the middle of it, but I feel like the mental side of it and just the ability to wake up the next day and go run another 40 miles is just such a beating that it would almost, I don't know what it's like come day 40, day 50, whatever it is, but I feel like that would almost put me like into a depression of like, man, I did this yesterday and I still have 20 more of these to go. Like, is there an end? Is this thing worth it still?
Yeah, you can't think about the 20 more. I think we did a really good job of just focusing on what we were going to do that day. And so long as we did that, we realized, okay, there's 32 today. All right, this is what we're going to do, and let's just go. And so if you think about it, like, I think the most successful people in life are extremely routine oriented.
Yeah.
There's not thought that goes into, not a lot of thought that goes into to action, and it's action because the thought whatever it was had taken place far before.
Yep.
And so if you sit there and meditate on it or dwell on it or fear of the anticipation, you're not going to do it. So when you get into a routine, it was literally, I was getting up and running 30, 40 miles a day. It was as easy as getting up and brushing my teeth and flossing and then eating breakfast, and like it's just everything with da. And I really didn't think much of it. And you put your mind into that state of it's just what we're going to do today, and I'm going to enjoy it. And so one of the things we did too, instead of looking at like the big number, is we would go 5 mile increments. And so if I was feeling sexy, maybe starting off, I'd tell my wife and the crew, like, hey, I'll see you guys 10 miles down the road today. I'll meet, maybe I wasn't feeling so great. Like, hey, let's meet like 3 miles up. And there was a lot of it too where, I didn't carry any water or nutrition on me, and I just relied on the crew to supply that. And I think that, to have it supported that way, like there's dudes and chicks and all of it, like, have gone across the country self-supported. Like that's next level. And I got a lot of respect for those people. And, but to have that support, meant everything. And it also allowed me to be able to get to these stadiums on time, to deliver the grants, to be able to do the media interviews, to get in front of people. And that was, that meant everything.
You mentioned earlier kind of the stoic philosophy. When did you start doing – most people find that philosophy in big transitions in life, but, when did you find that, adopt that mentality, and really start working from that place?
I think there was a couple different things. I think number one, it probably goes back to my upbringing. And my dad was a 4th-degree black belt in Kempo karate, and he was really into mental performance. And so, there was books that he was giving me, ancient martial arts books that he'd give me to read, and so I got into a little bit, and so it sort of had this Far Eastern approach towards sports psychology, and then combine that with The Mental Game of Baseball, which was a book that I got when I was a kid, and Harvey Dorfman and Carl Keel wrote it. Carl Keel ended up being a big mentor of mine for all through my entire big league career until he passed in 2008. But that was the base. I didn't know what it was, but that was the base of it. And then when I got into doing the ultra endurance sports and started delving into all sorts of books and other things, and then kept seeing, Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, and these quotes come up, and then I got into reading a lot of Ryan Holiday's books, and Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy. He has the new one called Stillness is a Key, and I had an opportunity to meet Ryan, and just really kind of the communication back and forth. We just email back and forth. Really, Lance Armstrong's a buddy of mine, and he was a mutual friend with Ryan, and then figured out that I'd read a couple of his books and linked us up. And it's weird because I don't want to, maybe it's biweekly communication, but it's just something that goes back and forth between the two of us and just bouncing ideas and stuff off of each other. And what's crazy is that, all this stuff that Ryan writes about, or that I champion in the daily hustle, it's just 2,000 years old, man. This isn't stuff that we all of a sudden created, and there's this new approach to life that is going to bring happiness and fulfillment to all of us. This has been around for a really long time. I just think we as a society have gotten away from it, and we try to control everything.
We look for easy things.
We look for easy things all the time. We're afraid to step outside of our comfort zone. I think the two main principles for anyone listening who don't really understand what Stoic philosophy is, but basically there's two main guiding, I'd say phrases of Stoic philosophy. Number one is amor fati, and it means love your fate. Love your fate no matter what happens to you. Whatever it is in life, because there's so much that we can't control, love it and enjoy it. And it's crazy how powerful that is. That puts us on this path that's going to be a lot more enlightened than if you're trying to resist everything and hate everything and how poor me and you're always the victim. It's just just love everything that happens to you, because it's especially even the dark times are the ones that really kind of let us know who we are. And the other one is memento mori. It means we all will die. And I think even Stoics, I don't think they said this to scare people. I don't think they said it to in this totally morbid sort of way. I think the concept of memento mori is live each and every fucking day, because it's not always going to be there for you. And at some point, it's going to end for all of us. No one has gotten out of here alive. Mm-hmm. So when you realize that, when all of a sudden you go home after a long day or a long weekend or this or that, and you're sitting around, and, your kids are maybe, irritating you at some point, and the wife's, and it's just and you feel this stress inside, and you're like, come into the moment and be like, hey, look, you know what? Life's not always perfect, but how freaking cool is it that we're all sitting here, and that's, that little shit over there that, won't stop, bugging me, that, I created that thing, and this is awesome, and just it's just life. We all need to sit there back and celebrate life for what it is, and it's not necessarily even what we think it should be. And ultimately the other thing is, it just comes down to coming in the moment, feeling the air through the nostrils. That's a trick that I always go back to, and I did that in baseball too. I think the difference between now and when I played baseball is I did a lot of these things, but I didn't know what I was doing. There wasn't really an answer for it.
Takes a little time for the wisdom piece to come in. When you look ahead for the foundation, you guys have a documentary coming out. Where can people find that? And just, a little bit of the story behind where the documentary came from. I assume you had to pitch it to some director to get a whole crew to follow you around.
Yeah, it was.
So when I start my documentary, now I know how to do it. How do I do it?
Yeah, it's what's cool though is that if you have a vision, right, that goes beyond yourself, I think that's what got all of us excited about doing the doc. There's actually a documentary that I was involved with called Diamond to the Rough. It was all about my transition from playing baseball to doing the Western States 100. That's across all the platforms. Basically, I don't think it's on. At least it's on Apple. It's on Apple TV, and you get on Vimeo and whatever. But what I learned through that experience is that, like, we were really proud of this doc, and we thought it did a really good job. And the reason was it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the message. And so, like, the message of the transition of, like, we all are going to hit a crossroads in our life where we're going to have to try to figure out what's next. And Dive Into the Rough, like, really highlights that message. So, like, still to this day, I mean, on a daily, if not daily, then, you know, at least weekly basis, I get messages, and sometimes several messages like, hey, man, like, Dive Into the Rough has really freaking put me in the right direction of, you know, I was in this spot in my life and I didn't really know what I was going to do, and now I've, you know, I'm doing this or I'm doing that or whatever it is. I mean, anything from the guy that was 350 pounds, it just started, you know, with one foot in front of the other in the walk, because the whole concept of that is, like, it's not about running a 100-mile race. It's about finding something to do, and it's about moving. It's about just getting going, and it's about the start, right? It's the start that always stops us. And so then the whole thing with Let Them Play in this triathlon across the country, and when I was talking to a guy that was going to produce it, Eric Cochran from Ty Cooley Productions, him and I were going back and forth. We were working on another project, and I was helping him out with another project he had going about this kid, a baseball player with no hands and no feet.
Whoa.
Really, Landis Sims, his name, freaking stud. And so I pitched just to him. I said, hey, man, I said, look, so we're doing this thing. I'm going across the country. We only had about, you know, maybe a month before we were about to leave. And I asked him, I said, would you be interested in filming it and in capturing some of it? And I don't know exactly what I want to do with it yet. And, you know, ideally we'd like to use it as some kind of promotional piece, though, for the foundation. And so originally I paid him a certain amount of money to capture a certain amount of days. And once we got to those days, he goes, I'm in. And so he then funded the rest of it.
Nice.
And the post-production and everything. And so we have this partnership, which is nice, because we're both invested, you know, into it. And then it's the foundation is really the one, I think, ideally, you know, if we can get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible, that's going to benefit. So, yeah, it's a process, but it's also, I think, easier than you guys think. We put together Dive Into the Rough in like a 4-month period, won the Judges' Choice Award at the Monarch Film Festival in Pebble Beach, which obviously super proud of. We got into all these other film festivals, and so we have the little badge star and everything. And so this one right here, you know, as much as I love Dive Into the Rough, like this one right here, I think is freaking next level. And I just say that because, well, number one, the story is freaking cool. I should say number two, the story is cool. Number one, the message is fucking awesome. The idea of bringing this, you know, this plight of youth inactivity to light is everything, and has the potential to, you know, make legislators think twice when it comes to making physical education mandatory.
Man, I just think about that problem, and it's such a big one because we talked about it just a little bit ago, like just how simple it is to do nothing. Yeah. And you just sit there and turn the pad on, the iPad on, and it just talks to you. You don't even have to talk to it. You just press the button and something happens, but you're not actually doing anything. Like there's no physical product or action that's being taken, and it's so simple. And when you see parents like chasing that, their kids have no role models to actually follow of getting outside and taking action, doing something, going and playing. There's no actual model for them to follow. And I think people, when they actually get out and take action, and someone that's in the public eye like you are, that can really go and, you know, just bring light and shed some light on what these problems are, it makes a massive impact. I mean, and to be able to do it through an entertainment and a documentary, a movie, I'm a documentary junkie, it really makes an impact that people can, like, oh, I just have to do something. It doesn't need to be go play Major League Baseball. It can just be I get up and go for a walk every night. There has to be just some action taken and create some sort of model inside your household that kids can follow, because right now they just don't have anything.
Yeah, I think it's on us. I just put together routines for them, and I've tried with my kids, and it's difficult because, you know, I try to get them to run a mile every day, and I did it at least during the summer. And I try to get him run a mile with me every day during the triathlon across America, and especially on the run portion. And first few days, like nothing. I was like, guys, you're going to come out and run with me? And now, granted, it was 110 degrees, miserably hot outside, which is, we dealt with crazy, crazy weather conditions and whatever. But, then one day, all three just hopped out of the van and
just became normal.
Started running.
Yeah.
And then the next day, they did it again. And 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 it's like, we can try to tell kids whatever we want, right? Like, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. I used this in a Daily Hustle the other day. I believe it was a Voltaire quote. It was like, it was tell me and I forget, show me and I understand, and then was like, someone was like, let me do it and I learn.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the exact quote, but it was pretty damn close. And the whole idea is that let them experience running for themselves. Let them experience that little runner's high that we get at some point that says, wow, hold on a second, man, I feel great after doing this. Mm-hmm. And no, it's not always pleasurable. And even as much as I run, I can't say that I love every single mile. But what I really do love is that feeling when I'm done after each and every one of them, and even obviously the feeling that you get during. Yeah. And that's a euphoric high. Now, all of us in life, I think, the idea is to find sustained highs. And that's what really kind of we're all looking for, because these quick fixes, they're not real. And that's why I caution people with quote unquote the life hacks. Just be careful, because there's no really such thing as a hack. That hack might work for a short period of time, but ultimately, unless you make this a part of your life and it becomes a lifestyle, it's going to go away. It's like diets, right? Diets are the perfect example of the hacks. You can hack where you could lose 20, 30 pounds just like that, and guess what? A year later you're 40 pounds heavier.
I mean, you're mentioning the lifestyle piece, like being a role model to your kids. Like if you train 5 days a week, then your kids just think going for runs and going to the gym and doing whatever is totally normal. If you're just trying to get your kids to go outside, but then you never go outside yourself, you're telling them to go scooter and ride their bikes, but you never go scooter with them or ride their bike with them, like there's a disconnect there. Which leads me to a more interesting question. Do you know of any schools where they have like mandatory recess for the kids, where the entire staff and administration also takes a break and they go outside and they're playing tag and they're doing yoga or whatever they're doing? Like, they're setting the example for the kids. They can see, oh, look at fucking Principal Jeffrey over there is playing basketball on his 15-minute break, just like we are playing basketball on our 15-minute break. Or it's like the kids go play, but then there's no one setting the example at the upper level.
That's brilliant. And I'm going to take it right to my wife on the way home. I swear to you.
We have a new idea.
I'm calling her because she's on the board of our school. And I'm going to tell her, I'd say, hey, how about, and we just put this whole new outdoor space area. And that's one of the things too. You want to provide an environment that kids want to play in.
Yeah.
Right? They don't need much. Yeah, but if you can provide an environment, and we just did this whole new outdoor space thing at their school, but I 100% believe in that. Even if it's like just one of the recesses out of the day for a 10-minute period of time, where the teachers and the kids get out there and do the activity together. And guess what? That's also going to make the teachers better at their job. That's going to make them more highly functioning and more acceptable for, obviously the multiple personalities that they have to deal with on a daily basis. And I couldn't imagine how irritated they get at times. But one of the ways to relieve stress and anxiety, it's number one. It's just I wrote about this the other day. Just getting outside. Yeah. Just even us sitting here, like getting the sun.
So much cooler, right?
That's a testosterone booster.
Yeah.
Like just feeling the sun on your face, like just feeling the fresh air.
It's like every time we go out to eat when we're on these trips, like, can we just sit outside? Can we just get in the sun? It just makes you feel so much better. That's why SoCal was so nice.
Dude, when I'm sitting in the sun, I feel like I'm in a video game, and you can see like my life bar at the top of the screen, and like I get in the sun, it's like I'm like just filling up, like I got the force field. Or I just took like the magic elixir that like takes me from 20% life back to 100% life. It fuels me, man.
Yeah,
I love the sun.
Where can people find out about the movie, the foundation, everything?
Yeah, I'd say so. just start at ericbyrnes.com, ERICBYRNES.com. Right on the front page, I believe, is like the sign up for the Daily Hustle. You put your email address in, but you could go around the page. Like, I mean, we got the book there, F It List, Life Lessons from a Human Crash Test Dummy, which is basically, I started riding. It's a passion of mine, but I started riding in 2011. My dad passed away just suddenly and, totally unexpected, and was obviously going through a major transitional period of my life, not playing professional baseball anymore. And I started reflecting on a lot of the things that, had happened. And over the course of the next 7 years, I just I had these really cool compilation of stories. But I didn't just want this to be an autobiography. It's like, what value, if I just tell you guys to read it, like, are you guys going to get out of it? And so I went back and spent like 2 years going back and pulling the lessons out. And that's where they're short chapters, easy to read. Yeah. My wife calls it a bathroom book. Like, it's just, it's pretty cool. But then, there'll be a link to Diamond to the Rough there. You can watch the trailer to the Let Them Play documentary, all the up-to-date information coming out on that. October 10th is the screening in Nashville. The tickets are free. Of all the screenings that we do, and we're going to do probably in the range of like 10 before the official release. They're all going to be free. We're not going to charge $1. And our concept and idea for this is to really try to just get people excited. So ideally we want to fill the theaters up with, 200 to 400 people, have them get excited. So when the official release actually does happen, then, people are going to want to go out and have heard about this or whatever. So the trailer's impactful. And it's like, I'm not huge on social media by any means, but we put that trailer up, and within a short period of time, it had like 200,000 views on it. Oh. And it hit. And there's very few things I've ever put up that have ever gotten those kind of numbers. Yeah. But I think it resonates, with a lot of people. So even if you want to see the trailer, just go to the website. It's also, I think I have it as my pinned tweet there. But yeah,
he was like, Twitter, Instagram, I'm dying.
I know.
Just go see the movie. Go to the website. And it was like, it's pinned. I don't know.
Well, you guys
There's
know.
so many things. It's all the places.
It is. It's tough. You guys know.
Totally.
But it's you got to do it. It's communication. It's all these different outlets now. I've embraced it to an extent. I've like most people, I find Instagram at least a little bit more rewarding and more personal than a lot of the other stuff, where Twitter's a lot more newsy. Yeah. I use that a lot for my job. Facebook stuff, I just link to it.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeez.
It's a good one.
But overall, it's a really cool world that we live in. Yeah. Right? Because of this, like, we're so totally connected. Yeah. But I also think there's an element. It's like, man, we've never been so connected yet so distant.
Totally.
Yet
because no one plays together.
Look at this face-to-face interaction, looking into the whites of your eyes. Like, that doesn't happen all that often. We can sit down and have some cool long-form conversation.
That's why we go on the road and do this.
That's right.
Brilliant.
In person only. That's the way to do it.
Doug Larson, where can they find you?
Find me on Instagram, Douglas C. Larson.
Come to at Anders Varner, because I'm Anders Varner. At Shrug Collective, because we're the Shrug Collective. OneTonChallenge.com. Snatch, clean, jerk, squat, dead, bench. Add them all up. 2,000 pounds, 1,200 for you ladies. We'll see you guys next week.